Hi, my name's Joe,
And I'm Mike.
and you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week we'll be reviewing The Big Short.
Sick.
Yeah, it was tight. Hey everyone, and welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? Featuring two guys getting all of our vaccines and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And a big thank you to Tim Ocello on Facebook for that synonym suggestion, which is incredibly fitting for the movie that we're doing today. The Big Sick. Vaccines, sickness,
I didn't
sometimes
even
they go hand in hand.
put those two together as I was reading it.
It's a cool coincidence that I just throw those in a list, and sometimes it works out. Like it worked out with Nick doing the synonym for the episode that he was on that one time.
What was that?
The Mummy. I forget what his synonym was, but he suggested one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then
yeah.
he was the guest.
He was
on
the
that
guest
episode.
for the
Yeah,
synonym.
it works
That
out
is
sometimes.
funny. Yeah. Well, coincidences must be big in the Ocello family.
Yes. The lucky family. But this week we're drinking Extra Gold Slow Brewed Lager from Coors Brewing Company, a little craft beer company you may have never heard of called Coors Brewing Company. They try to make it look like a craft beer almost, like because they don't put the Coors name like big anywhere. And then they just have like a thing that's like, questions, call us at this number, Coors Brewing Company.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't say, until it goes into like the trademark on the side. There is no mention of Coors.
The only real like kind of thing you can get is that it kind of looks like an Anheuser-Busch like design on the can.
You're right. And the typography is kind of reminiscent of, I don't know. I mean, do you think this is something that they kind of, this is my first...
I don't know if that's actually intentional because it doesn't taste like a craft beer at all.
I mean, this is my first time with this beer. It's yours too, right?
Yeah.
So, like, do you think this is just something they came up with in-house, or do you think they like Blue Mooned this?
Probably came up with in-house. It seems like it's a response to what's the Miller one that's like...
High Life?
Yeah.
Whoa, I didn't even think about that.
It kind of tastes
that's
like
what it
that.
tastes like.
Yeah.
It's just as shitty, and
and they have the gold can and everything too.
Just
Like,
as
it seems like it's just
inexpensive.
their response to that. Plus, they just throw so many different types of beers out so they can control an entire
Right.
like section of the freezer. Like they want one door that's just entirely Coors products.
Right. Yeah. But yeah.
It's not great.
Yeah, I would not recommend it. If you see a 30 of these at the beer store or
Keep
liquor
walking.
store, keep walking. There are a lot of better cheap beers that you can invest in. This is arguably one of the worst I've ever had. It just does not taste good. But
I'm gonna cut my lip on that, aren't I? I'm bleeding right here on the podcast. Joe, do you want me to read that IMDb description?
yeah, I feel like there was just this pause here where I didn't know whether to ask you or
You can always
you ended
ask
up
me.
asking for permission.
May I?
Am I allowed to?
Oh, this is a tough one. This is a mouthful. A couple deals with their cultural differences as their relationship grows.
Wow.
I think there's a bit more to this movie than that.
That's pretty ambiguous, IMDb.
A white girl dates a non-white man.
Or, like, spoiler alert, don't read the fucking title. Like, you couldn't say anything about the coma. Like,
Yeah, right.
yeah, wow. Boy. Yeah, but I do have some notes. Or, actually, you had an experience with this film. I was unable to...
Oh, yes. So I went to it wasn't the premiere, but it was like the initial limited release of it. And I think it was technically the first showing.
Okay.
Because it was on a Friday, or maybe it was a Thursday night. I can't remember now.
Right.
But it was NYC, and they had a Q&A after the film with Kumail, Emily Gordon, his wife, the one who wrote it, and then Michael Showalter, the director, and Zoe Kazan, who plays his wife in the movie.
Okay.
So it was pretty cool, and I invited Joe. Joe wasn't able to make it, so me and my girlfriend went, and I bought the tickets online like the day before, and it was at the Lincoln Square AMC, and I picked out the seats thinking that the bottom of the screen was the front of the movie theater, like because like the way you're reading the letters, like why would you be reading them upside down? I guess like I've never
right. No, that makes
picked seats like that. Although now, when I just recently went to AMC, I've noticed that they do that with their IMAX stuff. You have to pick the seats, and it is upside down to what you would think it would be.
They should have some sort of visual representation of where the screen...
It should say front and back somewhere.
Or just where the screen or stage is.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. So you're not as disoriented.
And I was also looking at, like, I saw where, like, the handicap seats are. And usually they have them in the front of the theater because...
They put the handicapped people in the back of the theater?
I guess. Well, the way it works at the Lincoln Square AMC is that you walk in at the back of the theater. All the AMCs that I go to, you walk in at the front of the theater. So the handicap seats are at the front towards the screen because they don't have wheelchair ramps. You're not going to wheel someone in a wheelchair up to the back of the theater.
That makes sense.
And usually you want them to have like a good viewing experience, so that you're going to wheel them to the front of the theater and they just use their wheelchair as their seat. And so I was thinking, all right, I'm getting 2 prime seats, like I picked them like right in the center, second row. So I wasn't like right in the front, but I had a good spot to see the Q&A after and the movie. I was like, it won't be the greatest movie experience, but it'll be a good Q&A experience.
Right.
And also, no one had picked those seats, so I was thinking, and they picked a bunch of stuff in the middle and nothing in the back. So I was thinking, like, oh, all right, like people just don't want to like watch the movie like this.
Right.
And also, when you bought the tickets, it didn't say that there was the Q&A. I only knew because Kumail had tweeted it. So I was like, people don't know that there's going to be a Q&A, and after I'm getting these like awesome fucking seats. And then we show up and I like walk all the way down to the front of the theater. We showed up a little bit late too. Like the movie was just about to start. We had a real hassle trying to find the theater.
Right.
And I walk all the way down to the front row and I'm like, oh, this is not the row that I bought my seats for.
Aww.
So then we were literally in the second to last row in the back. And I was like, God damn it, I bought my tickets before all of these people.
Right.
And I ended up getting one of the worst seats in the house.
That sucks.
But to the credit of the movie, it was still an amazing night because it's a great movie.
Right.
So.
And you got to see the stars and the writer and the director. So.
Yeah, and the seats in the back weren't horrible. They were definitely the farthest away for the Q&A, but they walked in from the back. So like for a while, like after the movie ended, before it started and the credits are rolling, like Kumail is just sitting like a couple feet away from me, standing there and like shaking hands from people like walking by. So you did get to be pretty close to them, which is kind of cool. And then we watched the Q&A with them. I was too scared to ask a question because I have Mike Birbiglia PTSD from Joe's experience.
Dude, if I went, I would have asked another question. I am not phased. And it would make for
I wouldn't have asked the question before Mike Birbiglia anyway. That shit terrifies me.
It's, no, I get it. I don't know.
And then Mike Birbiglia was like the worst case scenario where you're like, what's the worst that can happen? Oh, that's the worst that can happen. He could be a dick to you.
Yeah.
And everyone in the theater can laugh at you.
Fucking question. Yeah. Oh, boy.
But everyone actually asked like pretty good questions at this one. There wasn't anyone that was like, how do I do film? Like they're all, because of the subject material of this movie, everyone was really interested in like, what is it like to put something that real on stage? And like, did you set limits for yourself?
Right.
You know, what can I not put in here because my family's going to be watching this or stuff like that. So that was a lot of cool stuff.
Definitely.
I think it was also the same Q&A, what do you call it? Curator.
Oh, really?
As it was for Mike Birbiglia. So he must do just Q&As for big movies in the area or
I almost thought he was from like that theater or something. I don't know. Yeah.
That's what I thought when we saw Mike Birbiglia.
He's a traveling curator?
Yeah, I mean, he was also talking about how he saw this when it premiered at Sundance or whatever. So I think he's involved somehow with the production or the distribution somehow.
I'm sure there's also some sort of company or something that puts on these kind of like, oh, do you want to have some sort of like premiere Q&A to generate buzz, you know, like that's definitely what the whole Don't Think Twice.
And similar to Don't Think Twice, the microphone setup and the PA was just fucking awful at this thing. So like, even like Michael Showalter at one point was just like, I fucking hate this right now. Because you would like go to talk and it would give the feedback, so you'd have to like hold it back here. And like everyone just had to be really quiet in order to hear what they were saying.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was really cool. Just like, especially because like when I went to see that, Silicon Valley was still like going on. Like they
Right.
were 1 week away from like the season finale, I think. So I'm like, I just watched you on TV.
Right.
Been watching you all year. And now you're like right here in front of me.
Definitely. That's
And
really
then also
cool.
we reviewed Hello, My Name is Doris with Michael Showalter, which I loved last
did,
year too.
yeah.
So I was like, I feel like everyone was really excited to see Kumail and maybe Zoe, and like I feel like not enough people were like clapping hard enough for like Michael Showalter. I'm like,
right, yeah.
from like Michael and Michael and Wet Hot American Summer and Hello, My Name is Doris. Like,
Yeah, he's done so much.
I was
yeah.
more excited for that. That was pretty cool.
He is kind of like I don't know. Kumail, a lot of Kumail deserves like a lot of that credit. I don't know. I'll get into it with my Joe notes or whatever. Yeah, which I guess I'll start now. Yeah, but I'd love
I'll
some.
pop in with any insider information that I may have
Yeah,
from the Q&A.
No, thank you so much. I had a wedding the next morning. I'm sorry. I know I really would have loved to go. Oh yeah, and as long as we're talking about just, yeah, I did want to, since we talked about like our live episode in the last review, Dunkirk with special guest Sabri.
I hope we remember to talk about it.
Check it out. We will. I'll remember it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes we have like a little like personal spot, and I'd like to use this one, and it sounds super weird to eulogize someone who acted in our annual award show, The Handies.
Best dressed at the 2017 Handies.
I can't keep up the charade that it was like a human, like Kevin Pettijohn is dead.
At a certain point, it gets too cruel.
No, but it was not a human. It was my family dog. Sam passed yesterday at the time that we're recording this. Doesn't make it any less sad that it's not a human. But yeah, he's been in numerous sketches that I've done over the years. And if you'd like to see his work on the Handies, visit our YouTube. His final role.
Oh, God.
His post.
Can we give him a post-mortem, Andy?
We should do an in memoriam with like two very serious actors and all their work, and then just Sam, and it was like The Handies 2015. Don't be too sad though, y'all.
He lived a very long life.
Yeah, he was like a 15-year-old Pomeranian with stage 5 heart disease. He led a very full life. He got to be on the Handies.
He was a very vivacious dog. From the few times that I met him, you would like walk into Joe's house and he would just like bark at you and then just spin in a circle like,
Yeah.
spin, spin.
Yeah.
It was great.
But yeah.
Rest in
that's
peace, Sam.
Pouring out for Santa.
Pouring out on your laptop for Sam.
Yeah. But yeah, let's get started with those Joe notes. This is Michael Showalter's third feature release in theaters. His two previous being The Baxter and Hello, My Name is Doris. Like Mike said, the latter was actually reviewed. We reviewed that like a little over a year ago. That came out over the summer-ish, right?
Yeah.
And again, the guest on that was last week's guest, Sabri. It's a really fun review. That was one of my favorites of last
Actually,
year.
I think that was probably a little bit earlier. That was pretty early in our 2016 season, now that I think about it.
Yeah, that is true.
That was right around the time we did like Batman and Deadpool and some of those, a couple weeks after that.
Right, yeah. Well, it's in last year.
Yeah.
Somewhere. You'll find it. But yeah, I definitely recommend checking out that.
Insider info from the Q&A, Michael Showalter was saying how I don't think he got into how he knows Kumail. Maybe he just knows him just because all comedians, I feel like, know each other in the industry somehow.
Right.
But he had gotten his hands on the script, just I guess to read it for Kumail. Had said that he basically like begged Kumail and Judd, like, I'm the one to direct this. Let me direct this. And
right.
They were like, okay. I mean, we'll have to see what like Judd says. And then there was a kind of funny bit where they're saying like at that meeting, Judd was like, all right, yeah, get to work, go start writing, and walked out of the room. And then they were just kind of like, did he just hire you? Like, do you have a job? Because he was just kind of like ambiguous about it. Yeah. And then they had to clarify. And he's like, yeah, like start right now. Start writing on it.
But yeah, like I was saying before, during that episode, I get more into Michael Showalter's work with his infamous sketch group, Stella, their television show, and the multiple television shows that Michael Showalter created since. I think between...
Oh, that's right. Kumail used to write for Michael and Michael Have Issues. I
Oh,
think.
really? Oh, okay.
Or one of his
that
shows.
makes more sense. Yeah. But yeah, I think since we recorded the Hello, My Name is Doris episode, he did just create a new show on TBS. It's called Search Party. It's really great.
Oh, that's him?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
He's
I
the
still
creator
gotta
of
check that out.
Yeah. He's like a co-creator, co-writer, but I know he's like one of the three people who put it together, kind of.
Does it have his tone to it, or?
It's very different. I don't know how I can't really compare it to anything else on TV. It like almost looks like it's like a web series, and then it's a murder mystery, and it's just really interesting.
It was with like Alia Shawkat and John Early.
Yes. Yeah. It's a cool series, and you can kind of fucking just blow through it. I mean, me and Saber were watching it live. We really enjoyed it. But yeah, if you want to know more about Michael Showalter, definitely listen to that episode. But the film was written by Kumail Nanjiani and his wife, Emily V. Gordon. I'm sure we'll get more into it as we get into the film. But as the tagline on the poster in this IMDb I'm looking at says, it's based off an awkward true story. Awkward.
Some of the marketing for this is like pretty bad. Like the
even the trailer's kind of like
I follow
corny.
Kumail and the Big Sick Twitter on Twitter, obviously, and like there's so many times where like the Big Sick Twitter will tweet something, and then like Kumail will like tweet at them like, "Come on, like act like we've been here before."
But yeah, the events in the film are based off of their real life relationship, Kumail and Emily. But yeah, as Mike mentioned before, the film was produced by Big Comedy Daddy Judd Apatow,
Big Bad Booty Daddy.
and Barry Mendel, and the film stars Kumail Nanjiani, Zoe Kazan, Holly Hunter, Ray Romano, Adil Akhtar, Zenobia Sharaf. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce any of these. It's like Anupam Kher, Bo Burnham.
Bo Burnham?
Bo Burnham? Don't keep that ham in the oven too long. You're going to burn ham. And Adie Bryant. And I cut a bunch of other people out because fuck them. There's a lot of like Kumail's roommate.
Kurt
and like,
Brunner. I don't know. I'm probably butchering that name as well.
But yeah, the people in Kumail and Emily's family within the movie, and then yeah, I guess Bo Burnham and Adie Bryant they're reasonable to shout out just because we know both of them.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely excited going into it.
I didn't know
Because I think
until
Bo
you
Burnham
told
is,
me.
is
Yeah.
brilliant with his stand-up.
Right.
He's okay as an actor. He's not bad.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I know Big Daddy Judd Apatow seems to. I think he has like a boner for him, just because.
I think everybody has a boner for Bo.
Because like he was in Funny People, and I think at one point Judd was trying to help him do some sort of musical, and I guess that fell through. It was like very early, like it was like when we were graduating high school.
He had that
yeah.
TV show too that didn't.
Yeah, I never actually ended up watching that.
Name.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, besides that, the film premiered at 2017's Sundance Film Festival. Also,
Had the second highest acquisition from that festival, I think.
oh really?
Yeah.
I wasn't so super familiar with
I don't know what was first
this
that year.
year's.
This year.
Saw this with a lot of old people. It was like overwhelming amount of old people. And
I saw it in the city on the first night, so it was like an extremely hipster crowd. Everybody knew who Kumail was. Kind of similar to like the Mike Birbiglia one, where I'm pretty sure everyone in there was a comedy fan to some extent. Like,
Definitely. I'm sorry if I call this movie The Big Short. I literally, in conversation to multiple people, have referred to this movie as The Big Short. What is with
I'm going to give it 5 fingers now. I'm going to change my rating.
Pull a Kevin. R.I.P. Rest in peace, Kevin. Thanks for helping us with the handies.
Check out our Big Short review from 2 years ago. Episode 9, I think. 9 or 10.
But yeah, what is with... I don't completely understand the movie title trope of saying, like, the big something, you know? Like, I feel like it's from as early as like, the 30s or 40s, where, like, I think that's when, like, The Big Sleep came out. And then there's, like, The Big Chill, which is, like, a gigantic movie. And then there's, like, The Big Lebowski. There's The Big Short. I
don't really understand it for this movie.
Same.
Because you would think, like, The Big Sick... It sounds like it's referring to either cancer or death. Like, The Big Sick, like, it implies, like, the greatness, sort of, or the... Greatness is not a good word for a disease, but like the importance of the disease.
Right.
When this is like something that they, for most of the movie, can't even identify what it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, I don't think anything is really a spoiler in this movie because it's true life. We
It's
know
a
they're
real
both
life
alive.
thing.
They wrote the movie. But it turns out to be like not even really anything in the end. It's like it was a weird reaction from her body.
Right. Something that she was
miscommunicating.
born with. Yeah. But yeah. I don't know how to jump into this movie, so maybe I just kind of want to broadly talk about it. And I feel bad bringing up one of the biggest problems with this movie right off the bat, but this movie's too fucking long. It's like
just about like my only problem with this movie.
It's like a half an hour too long. It's like it's a romantic comedy, but it's more. It's got like a lot of it's got this deviation of kind of like, oh, it's a romantic comedy, but somebody's in like a coma for a lot of it, and also there's these kind of...
It goes really in depth on like 4 different topics. Like we've got love.
Okay.
Like just straight up love. Like it's just straight up romance. Like we're seeing a relationship start, grow, end, and then eventually get back together again. Sorry for the spoilers, but they're married now and everything's fine. And then it's got an entire arc about family where we're introduced to the culture, and then we see sort of the problems that Kumail has with it, the way it affects his relationship, and then ultimately the way that he breaks away from his family while trying to just claim his independence from that sort of whatever. You've got religion sort of tied up in that same thing. Mm-hmm. And then you've got stand-up comedy, which has its own arc in this movie as well. And I think I told Joe this, excuse me, once I got out of this movie, but like I feel like this movie almost does a better job in like 2 hours of portraying stand-up comedy than like Crashing does in like an entire season. As much as I liked Crashing and I love Pete Holmes, I thought this was like a more concise, clean version of like, this is what stand-up comedy is kind of like.
Kind of. I can kind of agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's
I'm just saying that's a lot of themes to go through in a 2-hour movie, even a 2-hour movie.
There's a lot of that's like part of the problem. Is that
there's even more than that? There's like the whole like roommate thing too, like and about kind of like taking a chance on something and like not just allowing yourself to put too many roots in a place where it's not going to grow. Like, you know, that whole storyline like takes up a way more screen time than it probably should have in the end.
Yeah. Jesus. Yeah. There's so many, and it's problematic because when you're writing a script about your real life, I think you want to weave all of these themes and plot lines.
Well, because you know everything about it because it's your real life. So you're like, well, yeah, this was a huge factor, and it all probably was. But when you're making a movie, you have to kill your darlings at all times, and you have to. Yeah, this may be a great individual scene. A lot of the scenes with his roommate, and like the one scene that I think that I point to that I'm like, why was this not fucking chopped right away? It's a great scene, but the scene where he drives the one, I don't know what you call him, the arranged marriage candidate. He drives the one girl home.
Yeah.
And then she has kind of like an opportunity to like express her feelings, even though we only see her for like one scene. And it's like, I kind of know why that's in there. Like they're trying to give a voice to these arranged marriage candidate women. Right. So that it's not just like, oh, like Kumail like just wants to be able to choose like a white girl essentially. Like they have agency and they have a voice too. But for the story of this movie, which is the love story of Kumail and his wife, like that's not really that important to like give her a chance to say that.
There's even random stuff. I wouldn't even. I mean, I would. There's a lot of things I would start with cutting. Like somebody should have taken a red pen to this movie to make it truly the fantastic movie that it could have been. Kind of. I think a huge one is. No, I won't even get into that yet. But let's just talk about first act, him and Emily falling in love. This first love story, because then we go into a second act, which is the love story romantic comedy trope starts all over again, and all of a sudden Emily's parents have to fall for Kumail too. And it's just kind of two romantic comedies back to back. But let's talk about Emily first. There's so many things where I could tell like, oh, that's happened in like real life, and it's like kind of anecdotal where she's kind of like, oh, can you like leave the apartment so I can like take a shit, or like something like I know this is kind of ammunition for, you know, hiding the arranged marriage thing, but it's kind of like, oh, I had a husband, and like, you know, but before this
Insider Q&A that was actually improv.
What the fuck?
That it was something that came up in not that scene, like not the take they used as improv,
right?
But in improv she
came
came up with that backstory and then asked Emily Gordon, like, is that okay if I add that to your character? Or not add, rather, if I put that in. It was something that she knew about Emily, but wasn't in the script. And then when they were improving that scene, I don't think they used that exact take, but that awkwardness is from the improv of like, oh, hey, here's this major fact about me. And him being like, oh, okay. And then also they improved in that scene. They were saying, what does she say where she's like, I'm so...
like wine savvy, like
no. She said, rather than saying like I love you, she says like I'm so like captivated or some kind of word like I'm enthralled or captivated or something, and then he just repeats it back to her, and then she's like, that's kind of creepy, just to say it like that. That was like improv in that scene from what they said, because someone asked them about that. So it's that's a weird. Yeah, I think it was something that like they were just kind of feeling like the movie magic maybe a little bit, and they're like, this is something that does that. And I do like inserting that fact, but then because it gives her something to have ammunition when they're having the fight.
Exactly.
And she's like, you know, you didn't tell your parents about me, and he's like, well, you didn't tell me that you had like a husband, like, and it's not like the greatest counter argument. He still kind of looks like a douche in that situation, but at least gives him something to kind of throw back at her.
Yeah, definitely. And it kind of plays into like, oh, like maybe this is why she doesn't want to be seeing anyone right now or whatever, yada, yada, yada. But like, no, she could just be going to fucking school. Like it's this kind of like cultural hindering has been like thrust upon Kumail, and her as a white girl, I think couldn't completely understand that. Like, I just like, he's trying to like hide something culturally, and then it just kind of like comes to like, I have problems too. Like, I was in a failed marriage, and it just kind of like really takes away from the story for me. I was just kind of like, no, like, let's just cut that. It complicates things too much to think about.
I think I disagree. I think it does help the story a little bit.
I mean,
I think the way that it came out,
not a lot of it.
I do like a lot how honest I think this movie is about stuff. Like, I think that scene with like her like not wanting to take a shit in the apartment, like that's honest. I think the way that they joke with each other is very honest. And I think the way that this comes out is very honest, where it's like that happens all the time. Like, you're just trying to get to know someone, and you're in a public setting, and something kind of uncomfortable comes out in conversation, and you're like,
right,
okay, I didn't know that about you. I kind of wish I was like sitting down in my own apartment when I found this out about you.
Yeah, and I do enjoy that factor of this movie, where like all of the conflicts are very atypical. The fights are messy, kind of, you know, it's just kind of not everything, even at the end, is kind of tied up in like a nice like bow or whatever. The relationship with his parents.
It gives, I mean, not that as a real person that she needed any other reason to not want to get into a relationship, but I think for us as a movie-going audience, it kind of gives us something to be like, oh, that's why she doesn't want to get into a relationship. Because until she said that, I was kind of confused where I'm like, they have this amazing chemistry together. Like they're really hitting it off. Like they really seem to be making each other laugh and happy. Like, why would she not want to get committed to him, especially when he hasn't revealed that his family is that strict in that way?
Right. Yeah.
So that justified that sort of hindrance or hesitation on her part for me, and made more sense to me. And that may or may not have been actually true to real life. I mean, because they held it out of the script.
Right.
Originally, it just came up in improv, just as something that Zoe knew from getting to know Emily, apparently.
Right.
But I think it works on screen better, even if it's not true life. Like
Right.
that makes more sense to me as an audience member to be like, okay, that's why she's holding back a little bit.
Let me try another red pen moment with you. I think the first thing I'd cut is everything involving that fucking one-man show. As a filmmaker or like a screenwriter, I understand the appeal of a one-man show. It's easy exposition. It reveals like what the character thinks of him or herself, and I'm sure it looks like great on paper. It's meta, but on screen, it's just like it's fucking boring. And I hate looking at like a tiny black box theater through like a lens. Like even the cinematographer for La La Land could not make that work, and that whole movie looks gorgeous, but like we get to her play and it's just kind of like, all right. And I know like it was like a big joke that Kumail's play is boring and it's bad, but it's like it doesn't play out as a joke that it's boring.
But then
and bad.
even when he improves it, it doesn't come across as like interesting. Right. And it's in stark contrast to when he does stand-up comedy. Like the routines that he's doing are actually funny. Like you're actually just laughing as a fan of stand-up comedy when he's supposed to be bad and like not confident in the beginning.
Right.
You're still laughing at his jokes and you're kind of like, yeah, like now I see why Kumail is as famous as he is for comedy and whatnot.
And it's also like the second time we do see, again, we spend so much time with this kind of, it's like Bo Burnham and 80 telling Emily about the show, and there's that whole setup, and it's kind of like it's really bad, and then we go to the show, it's really bad, and then they talk backstage, it's really bad. Bo Burnham and 80 even reprise their, oh yeah, it's so good, dude, but it's not. It was just like, I was just like so bored for like 10 minutes of this movie, and then when we get back to it,
it's because it's got like two different comedy sort of like storylines where it's like his stand-up career and then this weird passion project. Like, why not just stick with stand-up? Like,
right.
Even if he did in real life, which I almost feel like he didn't. I feel like that was maybe an addition. I don't know. I'm not a Kumail historian. He didn't speak to that.
Right.
I think they feel like they added it to try to do exposition. Yeah, like you said about his character and to maybe make him more sympathetic to like he doesn't like hate everything about his homeland. He's not trying to become just 100% American burger eating, beer swilling guy.
Right.
He just is not a fan of some of the customs that are kind of holding him back from that country.
And like, yeah, I mean, they try to get across that it's better the second time that he's performing it, but it's like, we never saw him work on it. We never saw a motivation for him to get better. We never saw like a lot of things. And the second time it's really just being used as a tool for like Emily to eventually show up and be like, hey, feeling better. Yeah, it's just like, why have that in there at all if there's stand-up?
And that was kind of weird. Like there were a lot of like, I don't want to say they weren't like false endings, but there were times where you're like, okay, this is where you should wrap it up now, right? Like, and they did speak to this, like because it's almost like the movie comes to like it feels like it's come to its conclusion when she sort of turns him down after waking up from the coma,
right?
Especially like time wise, like that's about like an hour and a half into the movie, and you're kind of like, all right, like they should be wrapping this up. They even do some scenes that feel like it's wrapping it up, just because they're wrapping it up for those characters, like where Holly Hunter kind of has the sort of goodbye scene with him, and you're kind of like, okay, we must be winding down now,
right? But
then we go on for another half hour, and there's like the party scene, and there's her coming to visit him at like the show scene. We could have condensed maybe some of those, and it may not be accurate to real life, and I think that's the problem, is that
they're too close to the material.
They needed someone to come in and be like, maybe she does forgive him at the party. I mean, it takes some convincing, but we need to condense those scenes a little bit, or shorten each of them so that it's a lot. Like it's like a half an hour of just like, okay, all this stuff to get to wherever. We should have started tying up some of these strings a little bit earlier.
Right. And again, you can cut this many different ways and make a better movie out of it. I mean, I do think he's got 2 or 3 really good movies in this one movie, and it feels rushed to have that. It feels like, it kind of feels like when you're like adapting like a trilogy of books and you just kind of like put it into one movie, kind of like that's what this feels like at times.
You know, storyline I would also get rid of is like
What?
the Ray Romano cheating on his wife storyline.
Yeah.
Like
What's wrong with having like a fucking like docile dad in like a matriarchal like I really liked his character like up until that point where it's kind of like, well, I'm kind of like, you know, we're having problems because of this, or like it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It didn't fit for me. Yeah.
At the same time, like I do like the big themes, like all 4 of them, like love, family, religion, and stand-up comedy. I just feel like they needed to shave a little bit off of each of them to cut this movie down, and then completely cut just some story, like the roommate storyline. Like, as far as I'm concerned, he shouldn't even have a roommate in this movie. There's too many characters at a certain point.
He can
and,
be like quirky sidekick.
he
for
could have just
comedy
been,
relief,
He
kind
could,
of,
he
yeah.
could have just been the guy from the club or whatever.
Or it just
Especially because Kumail never has like an honest conversation with him.
yeah, no. There's nothing resolved there. Yeah.
And it also like makes me feel bad too, like when he just kind of like stays there at the end. And
It
like, I
makes
know
everybody else look like a shitty person.
and
kind of,
they're
yeah.
trying to say something. I know about the way it goes in stand-up comedy is that some people take the leap and leave, and
Right.
some people stay.
He's that guy. He's
Yeah,
in
he's the guy.
Chicago. Still doing. They do it again with like what's his name? And like you know, like people always tell me, Ben, you gotta do this, or what is that one guy that they're making fun of? And then he comes off stage and Kumail's like, we gotta tell him like that like bit just isn't working anymore. And then it kind of just, they fold and they're like, great set, dude, kind of. And it's just kind of like, what is the, I mean, like, I get, like, I love like anecdotal stuff, but again, when the cracks are showing because it's so long, kind of, you have to trim some of that, like save some of it for, you know, a podcast or a stand-up or, you know, your next movie. It's kind of, I don't know, it's trying to make so many different points and it doesn't need to. It needs to keep hitting at that core, but instead it's like hitting.
And that's the thing is like
so many
I don't
different
feel
things.
like anything is lacking in this movie at all. So that's how you know the answer is like it's not like they shortchanged anything and we're like
Right.
we know the relationship fully, we know the situation with his family fully, we know his relationship to religion fully. Even just in like I really love the fact that like when his family confronts him about religion, he's just kind of like, I don't know, like that even feels like a complete storyline to me, even in his not knowing, because that feels honest. And even stand-up comedy, we have a really full arc there. But that doesn't mean you can't cut some stuff from the middle or condense some stuff in the way that you do it or combine some scenes somehow.
I wish
Like, why couldn't the scene where, like, she comes to see him at the Black Box, why couldn't that be the reunion scene? Why do we have to have him go to
Right.
New York? Like,
yeah.
that's not really important to his story in this movie. The Kumail in this movie, that's not very important to get to New York.
Right, yeah. Yeah, even that New York plot line, why can't they continue to exist in the same city and not loving each other, like, and not being together, kind of. I also I don't know, there's this whole arc of forward movement in stand-up comedy that never completely lands, and I think they could have just cut all that one-man show shit and made a more complete arc with stand-up comedy, even though I love all of the scenes that they do with stand-up comedy.
Yeah, that's true. Like I think that is the better decision, is to just stick with stand-up comedy. But if they weren't going to do that, then cut out stand-up comedy altogether and have it just be he has some friends that are comedians, but he's doing this one-man show. Like, why are we seeing him do stand-up? And again, I know the answer is because like that's probably how it actually happened. She probably did actually woo at like a stand-up show, and she probably did show up in New York as this big kind of grand gesture of "I want you back."
Right.
And that's very nice to tell the grandkids, but it doesn't always make the greatest movie.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna grab another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure. One thing that I feel like they should have added, and my God, they shouldn't add a lot, but I'm kidding. I do really love this movie, But I would have liked to see a little more dialogue with Kumail's brother's wife, because I like that this movie isn't demonizing arranged marriage. I think there's somebody for everybody. They're not, being sort of xenophobic of kind of like, that's different and that's not America, and that doesn't work for anybody. Where the brother is even like, it works for me, like we love each other, we're like very in love kind of, and his brother kind of seems like he's more of his parents than Kumail has kind of. He's younger. He grew up later, and he was able to gain more independence and become more
have that great
Americanized.
scene where his brother is kind of like, it was really awkward at first. Like I was living with this woman that I barely knew, but then we fell in love. Like it does work sometimes.
But I would have loved to see some reassurance from her character to be like, yeah, I'm not just this victim of circumstances. Like I actually love this guy, and I love coming to like this family dinner kind of. And I don't know. I think it could have put some more. I don't know.
I think that was what they were trying to do with that one scene of him driving the girl home, is to kind of say like, it's hard on them too, and they're looking for love in their own way as well.
Because Kumail's parents are never completely victims. I think everybody has their time at the table, kind of, to say their piece and gain empathy from the audience, so yeah, I really liked that about it too, because like were you ever like, man, fuck Kumail's parents? Like everybody had a reasonable request, kind of. They were even like, yeah, you can do the comedy, just like, we have one request, is that you allow us to like pick your wife or whatever, and like we're really trying here, and we're really trying to accommodate your very picky.
I think it does a good job of still showing that they're being unreasonable in some way, but showing that it's out of love.
But I think
like
it's
important. They never act completely like assholes, but they also understand. They make us understand that like this is the culture from where they're coming from.
Right.
They're trying to at least keep that amount from sort of. I don't know if the old country is the way that they would refer to it. That's more like a Italian thing.
That's something I would say. Yeah. It just sounds like an immigrant phrase.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think it's important that Kumail was an asshole to them, and I think that's what this movie can accomplish. Like he wasn't just like, poor me, kind of like, he kind of like even the.
You mean just in hiding his girlfriend from them, he was an asshole, or
just.
In the confrontation
sometimes, yeah. In multiple confrontations, like it would be tit for tat, kind of, like where they're trying to be. I don't know. I feel like Kumail wasn't completely the victim in his situation with his parents, and I think that's over the entire movie. I don't know if you do or don't agree with that.
Sure. I'm not sure if I agree. I don't think they show him in a bad light at all. I mean, maybe he could have handled it like a little bit better.
He's a son. He's a son who doesn't completely agree with his parents, and I think that's like a baseline kind of something that we can all agree with. Whether,
I think and your parents they definitely show him sort of being an asshole to Emily in the movie. Like I think you're like, oh, you fucked up, dude.
I don't know. I just think he's an asshole in all aspects of his life at one point. It's kind of like how everyone has their turn to say their piece. I think everybody who comes to the table and is like, Kumail, you gotta change this, kind of, or Kumail, whatever. It's just, I don't know. And again, maybe it is problematic that he thought he could do this like 2 dates at prom kind of thing for like a really long time and kind of hide his parents from knowing this, and like they're bringing all these girls and he keeps hurting them every time he's turning them down, and then like kind of like he's doing the same thing to Emily where he's not being completely honest with her. I don't know. And I think in that sense he's being a very selfish person, and he's being kind of an asshole to these two different parties, and the resolution at the end is him becoming a better person and knowing how to more appropriately handle both of these relationships.
Again, I agree. I think he wasn't a douche to Emily, and I think he was not being fair to the women that he kept not agreeing, but still going on these dinner dates with for the arranged marriages. But I still don't know if I agree that he was that he treated his parents unfairly. Maybe he could have handled it better by definitely like telling them earlier.
Right.
Because I do think that is like a moment of like, that's what he should have done, has been
Right.
like, I don't know if I agree with this. You know,
Right.
I'm sorry to
Well,
disappoint
he's
you.
humoring them for so long. I think that's like my interpretation of like how he's being an asshole. I don't know. He's trying to live both lives.
But then the way that they respond to that also makes you sort of sympathize with him. Like now I understand why he didn't fucking tell her about them, because
Right.
the moment he says that he doesn't believe that this is the way that things should go, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that he doesn't want to let everything from the old country dictate his life here in America,
Right.
then they kind of like disown him for like a little bit. And I do like that in the end, they definitely let you know that it's going to be okay with Kumail and his parents, but they don't have that like big like, we love you anyway, no matter what you believe.
And I like
moment.
that. Yeah, that never completely happens. And I think, I don't know. I think there's a lot of scenes that speak volumes to. I wish this was. I don't know. I wish this was more widely released, or some. There's something missing here where I haven't heard anything about this film really.
It was almost 3,000 theaters, I think. when it
Really?
went wide, yeah.
I just wish there was like as much attention on this as like Master of None or something, you know, like because it gives like a more of a kind of honest approach to having immigrant parents and also just being like a fucking adult and being like, why are you doing that? Like, I love when he's like, you know, like, why did we move here?
Why did we move to America? Yeah.
If you want me to act like we're, you know, back there, and like, why do we have to adhere to like the old ways? Like, it's such like I don't know. It's definitely, that's like the battle cry of like all immigrant, you know, offspring kind of. It's kind of like, no, we're in America now. Why the fuck would we act like that? I don't know. But again, I think that shows the hurt on both sides, where it's kind of like, we brought you here for a better opportunity, but we still want you to adhere to traditions that we grew up with because we believe it made us better people, kind of, and just kind of, I don't know. But yeah, again, spoiler alert, but one of my favorite scenes of this movie is that last scene where it's only his mom is completely not even going to say goodbye to him, but she still shows this gesture of kind of like, I made your favorite food the way that you like it with extra potatoes, and the father is more forgiving, kind of.
I like the restraint that scene shows, because like you can feel. And I don't know if it's the acting, because I don't think Kumail is the best actor in this movie. That's one of my other complaints. I think a lot of the other actresses, when we get into this, are phenomenal in this. But in that scene, maybe it's just the way it's written, you can feel that they want to hug each other. Like they want, like his dad just wants to be like, fuck it, like you're my son. Like I don't fucking care about this shit. Let's just hug it out. But they don't hug. And I think a weaker screenwriter, and maybe that's just because of the way it actually went in real life. That's kind of how I approach a lot of this. But I think a weaker screenwriter would have been like, yeah, let's just let them hug, even if he's, you know, going to be at odds with his mom. But they don't hug. And I think that's very true to like, yeah, like if you just had this like argument with your parents, the wound is still going to be fresh. And even if your dad is the more reasonable one, he's also trying to please your mom at the same time. And you're not going to have that kind of happy resolution right away. It's going to take some time to heal those wounds.
And it's just a completely reasonable, like, I don't know. I feel like I knew a lot of like, you know, immigrant parents, offspring growing up. And I know like as you get into college, kind of like I've heard like 2 or 3 times where there are parents who like literally abandon their children, or like at least give like light shunning. Like that's just how it is in that culture. And I'm glad they didn't kind of, I mean, Kumail's writing it, like, so he knows the culture best, but I mean, like at the hands of any other screenwriter, it'd be like, we forgive you, kind of like, you know, that is forgiveness, you know, in that kind of family. But yeah,
and like if you watch like the credits, like it shows like his real parents, and they were at the wedding. So like obviously like eventually they you know met Emily and were able to approve of everything, and it's going to take more time than you can fill in a 2-hour movie, even a long movie like this.
But I do love the casting of Kumail's family.
Tell me some of the things that you do like about this movie.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think sometimes, and I'll get into this with Dunkirk, but I feel like last week. But I do feel like when you like a movie, you are able to more finely tune your complaints with it, kind of. And I do love this movie. Don't get me wrong. But I love the casting of Kumail's family. They're all fantastic. His dad, the actor who's playing him, I think this was literally his 400th or 500th film. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I know like Kumail or something like announced that at like the premiere or something, and I really enjoyed seeing him in something that wasn't like a fucking racial stereotype. Like his only other big like American role was like that Indian stereotype doctor in Silver Linings Playbook. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the doctor.
Oh, they get into
Silver
like
Linings.
I don't know. It was just like super weird racist role.
Sounds like Hollywood.
Yeah, and I'm also glad. I don't know. Like Kumail didn't get like his actual parents to like play like. Aziz Ansari. I'm sorry, that's kind of charming. No, it wasn't. It was a fucking disaster in Master of None.
Yeah.
But I'm still lost in the fucking like this. I don't know. Like maybe you compare it to like Crashing, kind of, but like I kept seeing what I wanted Master of None to be in this film. Like maybe this isn't my place, but you know, Aziz spends like an entire episode criticizing like Hollywood for not casting any Indian actors, but there like weren't any really in his show, kind of, you know, like it was kind of like hired like a really well-known like Indian actor who you know is doing his 400 or 500.
Yeah, and then he gave 2 roles to his parents who do not want to be in Hollywood.
Right? Yeah, it was so weird, and all I'm saying is that I don't know. And Aziz like, I won't get into it, but it's kind of like, why don't you find like people of this descent attractive, but he only dates like white girls in Master of None. Like that's super problematic to me, and I don't know, as a white fucking 20-something-year-old male, I don't know if I have any place to talk about this. All I'm saying is I think The Big Sick should be getting some more critical attention, like Master of None did, to get more people of color in the writer's room, attached to projects with, you know, bigger producers like Big Daddy.
It is kind of telling that like these are probably the 2 biggest like Indian roles that there have been in recent memory, but they both had to write their own. They had to create their own shit. Like there wasn't someone that was like, here, and the lead character is Indian, and we'll cast someone. Like Aziz had to write and create his own fucking show. Right. Kumail had to write a true story about his own goddamn life to like get someone in that position. But I do think, regardless, I do think it is impressive, like that how well this movie kind of did, and how it kind of just spread through word of mouth while still having an Indian. Like it just goes against like everything that like Hollywood says, where it's like, oh, it's not gonna sell. Well, it fucking did. Like so, we can kind of just get rid of that like stereotype at this point and just cast who's right for the goddamn role and write who's right for the story. We don't need to whitewash every goddamn movie.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe let's move like a little further into the movie. I know I was talking about the first act for a while. I think it's like kind of, I was really into the movie when it's just him and the parents. Like I really enjoy, like there was so much more of a struggle kind of to get them on his side. Then, I mean, obviously in a relationship, there shouldn't be that much struggle at the beginning, you know, like obviously they're at a baseline attracted to each other enough to sleep with each other kind of. But with the parents, it's kind of like, no, we've heard about you and like you're fucking like how you tricked our daughter for so long or whatever. And to win them over and everything, I really enjoyed that. I don't know, I might be alone in this thought, but I feel like Ray Romano has like the best performance in this movie. He does like a really...
He's great. I think I would argue that I think Zoe Kazan has the better performance in this movie. I thought she was fantastic.
Yeah. No, I really...
But you could make an argument for Ray. You can make an argument for Holly Hunter in that role. You can make
I
an argument
loved
for
her
pretty much
so
everyone
much.
but Kumail. I love Kumail, and he's...
Oh, Kumail's entire family kills it too.
He's great for this movie, but there are some scenes where it hurts to have Kumail in that role. Like I
Yeah.
think a lot of this more serious scenes, he can't like wipe the smirk off his face, where he just kind of has this like look on his face. It's like, I'm in a Hollywood movie right now. Like I'm acting out. Like he just looks too happy in scenes where, like, even in the trailer, the one scene where and again, in that scene, Zoe Kazan is fucking killing it, where she's like, can you see like a future for us together?
Right.
And he can't wipe the smirk off his face when he's like, no.
It was kind of like, this is more writing, but I hate when he, after his parents kind of disown him, and he walks in the house and he starts introducing like all these like cue cards for them, kind of to like hold up, kind of like, I'm disappointed in you, and you know, I'm the more handsome son in the family or whatever, and like he's not doing a great job of acting it out. But it's also kind of like, I hate when I was talking about this, speaking of Crashing, Pete Holmes' HBO show, but when I was like, I hated in the pilot episode is like when him and his girlfriend are like intimate or something, and in Pete Holmes, it just all of a sudden randomly launches into, what's up with 69ing? It's like everybody's got to do work around in this place, and he's doing like
A stand-up bit in dialogue.
Yeah. He's doing what does like Jerry Seinfeld do? Like observational humor, kind of. And that doesn't work in social settings. Just kind of how like Kumail's doing weird prop work with like these cue cards, kind of. It's just kind of like Sabri wants to like kill me every single day because I do like funny bits and she doesn't play along at all, but bits can be like worked into real life, where like there's so many times where it's kind of like, what's a comedian like in real life? And it's kind of like, baby, can you pass me the oranges? Oranges? Why do they call them oranges? Because they're orange? Kind of like, it's people don't talk like that, like as far as I'm concerned.
It is, yeah, I did feel awkward during the cue card part. Like it felt like, it felt like he was doing like Dimitri Martin.
You're right, yeah,
type
exactly.
Of, like, comedy. And like it was almost like a little too clever.
And his family would
like
not go for that either.
It's out of place because I think the rest of the movie is really honest. Like I think my favorite part of the movie is the way that Kumail and Emily joke with each other, because I'm just like, that's how I am with my, like, it felt so real, like, because they were doing, like you're talking about, like bits with each other, and just kind of like fucking with each other and ribbing each other, and I'm like, that's how I talk like with my girlfriend all the time. Like that's how couples talk when they're trying to be funny.
Right.
It's not always like the most clever stuff. It's just kind of whatever comes to mind first.
But I don't know. There's a lot of great points where you can tell the real Emily's writing kind of shines through. Like, I mean, granted, Kumail was there, but I'm so glad, like, Emily didn't, like, wake up out of a coma and was like, oh, I just remembered all the nice things you did for me. Like, you know, kind
they
of
touched
like...
that on the Q&A where they were like, you know, she's literally unconscious for all of Kumail's progression. And we as the audience are like, it works, and I think it works great in the film because like it is this kind of like thing where, because of the trope of, you know, once we hit like 120 or 100 or 100, an hour and a half basically, once we hit like 90 minutes in a movie, we're like, all right, they're gonna wrap things up, they're gonna start falling in love again, and he's like there, and she's kind of like, why are you here? Like,
right.
And then he leaves, and we're even like when Holly Hunter like comes out into the hallway, we're expecting her to be like, no, come back in here and try again. And he's just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to go. Like,
yeah.
So I really like the honesty of that. And it's true to the fact that, like, yeah, she was completely asleep when he did all this character progression. So when she wakes up, he's still like the asshole who she hasn't talked to in weeks and who wouldn't, you know, was hiding her from his family and doing all the stuff that made the breakup in the first place. So, yeah, she's absolutely not going to be on board for him being there when she wakes up.
Right. And I don't know. Yeah. It's just, it is. I forgot what I was going to fucking say. Now I'm just, I mean, I guess the only, I mean, we already touched on this, but one of my favorite scenes is when Ray Romano and Holly Hunter get into like an argument in the hospital. And I mean, this is the first time we kind of see them get into an argument, or they're kind of a blank slate for a while. You're kind of like, who are these people that hurt our parents? But, I think they're just arguing about moving Emily to another hospital or something or other, and Ray Romano's like, "Oh, are we gonna play like the fucking hits? Because like I can write it from here, kind of." And it's such like it does a lot of the heavy lifting for what their relationship is like for the rest of the, I know there's like exposition let's get drunk night where like Holly Hunter tells her like life story with him or whatever, but that's like such like a sly kind of, and just like we were talking about before, with whatever, but it's just kind of like they do a lot of things where they throw out everything from like the typical screenwriting playbook, where it's kind of like you don't like her parents are main characters. Like you don't introduce main characters that late into a movie.
Yeah.
But they do it anyway, and it works really well.
When you don't have like the love interest of a romantic comedy unconscious for 1/3 of the entire
Right.
film.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you had made that point earlier. I think it was something we had talked about right after I first saw the movie. That it's kind of like it's almost like two love stories going on. Like you have the Emily and Kumail falling in love, and then she goes into a coma, and it's sort of like a love story in its own way. Kumail and her parents, where they they have, so to speak, like a meet cute, like where they're not cute, but like they're meeting in this really awkward way. Like, hey, like your daughter's in a coma, and I'm the asshole boyfriend that like broke her heart. Like, what's up? And then just I think they do a really good job of like naturally seeing the progression of them being like kind of coming around to him. And I think that drunk night is a good example of that. Like I really do like that scene of him getting drunk with Holly. I like the stand-up scene where they come out to see him.
Oh yeah, I love that.
That felt
scene
really
a lot,
natural.
yeah.
Like, oh yeah, like I want to go out to a stand-up show tonight. And then it does not go as planned.
And it's I like that the characters of Emily's parents aren't morphed into one being, where it's kind of like Ray Romano is like, I need to go out tonight and I need to get my mind off of it. And she's like, well, I want to look up like medical stuff on the iPad tonight. And, they kind of have this balance where it's kind of like, okay, we'll go your way tonight. And then he's comforting her at other times. It's realistic relationships.
It also felt very true to like families dealing with tragedy or just illness, preparing for tragedy, essentially. Like there's two different ways of approaching it. There's, I just want to get my mind off of it. I just want to go to a comedy show. And then there's, I need to know everything there is about what my daughter's going through right now. So I thought that was very real.
Overall, though, near the end of this movie, I got the feels. I got the feels more than like I left one time when he's sitting in the lunchroom and they're talking about 9/11 and what a tragedy
that got
was.
The hardest
and
laugh.
Kumail's like, yeah, we lost 12 of our best guys that day. And I literally I had like a really hard laugh.
Someone even asked him a question about that, and someone was like, is that like a stand-up joke that you just didn't think you could deliver in person and you saved for like a movie where you don't have to be on stage when you say something like that? Because everyone laughed, but everyone at the same time was also like, oh, like it was one of those kind of.
I also kind of didn't understand the setup with all of it. Ray Romano comes out of the gate being like, I want to talk tonight about 9/11 with you. And that's kind of like the first things. It didn't mesh well with
it's
his
a little
character.
sloppy. I know what they're trying to do.
It's
They're
a setup for that joke. Literally. I think so.
And it's also trying to show that like these aren't like cool hip parents. These are sort of parents that are a little politically incorrect, not really accustomed to a lot of other cultures. Because again, they don't live in the city. Like they're kind of, I forget where she's from.
Right. But Holly Hunter does get, again, because they've built this relationship with him, but she does get very defensive about like the whole ISIS like comment made by the frat guy in the bar. And it is kind of like this like flip-flop. There could be progression in there, but it was kind of like, I feel like Ray Romano brought up the 9/11 thing just so that punchline could hit.
Although Holly Hunter does kind of like, I forget exactly how she does it, but she's kind of like disapproving of him asking that, where she's kind of like, honey, like,
right.
That. So that is in character for her to be defensive of Kumail later too, especially after she's sort of gotten to know him a little bit. They've warmed up slightly, and that's kind of, I did like that where
Yeah.
it was like you saw her defending Kumail before you really saw her expressing to Kumail that I approve of you. Yet it was kind of like an unspoken way for her to be like, yeah, like you're part of our tribe now, and we'll defend
Definitely.
you from outsiders.
But yeah, you wanna? How far are we into this time wise?
We're ready for some reviews,
Okay, cool.
ratings.
Some fingers.
Some fingers, the big fingers. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 98%, based on 172 reviews, with an average rating of 8.3
It's at
out of 10.
98%.
Again, with Rotten Tomatoes, it's like, how many people could watch this movie and be like, that movie fucking sucked?
Well, I don't know. It was,
And they might also get a little bit of sympathy just from, it's like, it's a true story from the people who wrote it. Like, but the site's critical consensus reads, funny, heartfelt, and intelligent. The Big Sick uses its appealing leads and cross-cultural themes to prove the standard rom-com formula still has some fresh angles left to explore. Who goes first?
Whoever you want. Yes, I literally had to look. 98%. That's pretty wild.
We didn't really talk about it. There was like Oscar buzz for this at a certain point. I feel like it's kind of gotten overshadowed by the fact that Dunkirk came out. Check out our review last week.
Right. It could still. We get movies like this at the Oscars now, especially with a fucking. It could be a Best Picture nominee, I think, just because I feel like the Oscars now try to diversify genres, and I don't know. We see things like The Kids Are All Right or something. Like, like they're really trying to put in like one comedy like every year, and I don't know a better comedy that's kind of coming out. I mean, like Swiss Army Man.
It had a
last year
wide
was a nice
release.
one.
Like enough people saw it, like 3,000 theaters. That was more than like Atomic Blonde had like to start off with. Like, so
I think of Judd Apatow. I don't know. I don't know how like I hope the Academy feels the same way about Judd Apatow as the Comedy Family, that he's the big daddy and he's putting down his foot and he goes like, "This is my movie. Like, I want you to," because I feel like that's how shit gets nominated in the Academy. I hope
they would have to double down on like a campaign for it.
right.
But
then
they were
again-
also like they were retweeting like reviews that were like, Oscar buzz, Oscar potential, The Big Sick. So I think they will.
I mean, I know A24, this is completely off the beaten path, but A24, I don't know if Judd Apatow has anything to do with this, but the Disaster Artists, I know A24 is putting all of their chips for the Oscars into the Disaster Artist, which is the novel based off the making
For
of
Best Picture
The Room.
or
For anything, I think, which I have no platform
weird,
to
'cause
talk
there's
about.
a lot of A24 stuff coming out this year.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously after Moonlight, they had an amazing year last
Right,
year.
yeah.
But I feel like I see A24 on everything that's coming out this year.
And again, I have no real platform to talk about this, but what did you think of that teaser trailer of?
I didn't actually watch it yet.
It's like, it's basically they're doing, it's this cut of James Franco as Tommy Wiseau doing multiple cuts of like, I didn't hit her, I did not. Oh, hi, Mark, kind of, but.
That's what I hope this movie wouldn't be.
But
is-
James Franco fucking butchers. He doesn't have the accent at all. It looks very unnatural, and everyone lost their fucking shit over this trailer. And I was like, I want to see James Franco, like, I want to see him lost. Like, people say that. They said, like, James Franco was lost in Tommy Wiseau. Like, kind of like, have you ever seen Spring Breakers?
No, not yet.
I think he gets lost in like this riffraff role where he's fucking kind of scary at times, and you're kind of like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, James, like, calm down. Like, I think he deserved some sort of supporting actor nom for what he did in Spring Breakers, and I want him to do that in this, but like from what I've seen in the teaser trailer, it's not great. And
That's what I didn't want them to do, is kind of like this knowing nod of like, oh, hey, here's the scene that you guys all watch on YouTube for laughs from this movie that in the teaser. Like, I wanted it to be more of like, here's what you didn't know about the Disaster Art or about The Room and Tommy Wiseau.
right.
Rather.
Well, the joke is that it took him like 70 something takes to remember that line specifically. And so he keeps coming out and like he'll open the door and he'll be like, I hit her or something. And they'll be like, no, go back in. It's kind of funny, but it's just, I'm not confident in his role. Like he has to carry Tommy Wiseau to make that film work, I think.
I don't know how I feel about the makeup either, because it is pretty good.
He looks like James Franco in a wig, I think. I don't know.
There's definitely something different about his face. The makeup is one of the more convincing makeup jobs done to try and make someone look like someone else. Like, he definitely, like, you look at him and you're like, oh, that's Tommy Wiseau.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes I just wish people wouldn't do makeup jobs for historical or real life roles. Like, some of my roles that I liked better are when they didn't fucking like when Frank Langella was Richard Nixon and they didn't do the fucking like nose that like Watchmen did for Richard Nixon in Frost Nixon. Like sometimes it works better when you don't go out, or even what's his face, Josh Brolin in W is another great example. Like they didn't really go crazy on the makeup, they just made his hair gray, and it's like, okay, like you can believe that this guy is George W. Bush.
Yeah, I can get behind that. But yeah, let's get into some fingers. Yeah.
I guess I can go first. I really don't have a whole lot to say that I haven't already said. We say that every single goddamn review that we do.
Can I say that in the poster, in the promotional material, I hate that like Kumail's parents are all wearing visitor passes too.
Are they?
At least the mom is. Like they didn't visit her in the hospital. Like that's. Everyone's wearing one kind of, but it's just kind of like why his parents are not involved in that relationship. I don't know.
You can't see a big version of the poster.
See the mom.
Oh yeah, in this one it almost looked like it could just be part of her outfit, but yeah, that's clearly a visitor pass.
Yes, yeah.
That's a little strange.
Yeah.
Especially since she probably wouldn't have even met Emily for like a year or so after that.
I heard the real story very close to after her waking up in the coma. Kumail proposed to her, and then they got married immediately so he could be like, we're married now. Like, there's nothing you guys can do.
They talked about how it was very soon after, and they were like, we felt like that'd be
a weird end.
Strange and sort of unbelievable in the script to just be like, I'm awake, let's get married.
Yeah. There's I like the way it ends. I'm sorry, I'll let you go. But it ends like kind of like Before Sunset, like the Richard Linklater film. Like it's very like, oh, like it's a hopeful ending, but it's not definite. And I like that too. Like they're not like, I don't know.
If we didn't know that it was a true story, it would have been hopeful. Well, but because we know it's a true story, you're like, okay, obviously they're going.
Literally, the credits ruin it like 2 seconds later. But yeah, all right.
But I think Emily Gordon is in that actual last scene somewhere, like nearby Zoe. I didn't notice it while I was watching it, but I've seen a lot of, because Kumail and like Emily and Zoe are very active on Twitter promoting this movie, and they just retweet like almost like anything anyone says about them. So also expect us to tag them when we post this review.
Oh hell yeah!
Because they'll fucking retweet anything apparently. But a lot of people have been like, oh yeah, I totally recognized Emily. I think Emily might even be the one that does the woo at the end,
right?
Because we don't see the woo, and then we turn and we see Zoe there in that last scene. So she does get her cameo there. Yeah, I really like this movie. We spent a lot of this just kind of voicing our complaints about this movie, but those don't carry a whole lot of weight for me, to be honest. Like I was really just in love with these characters, in love with this kind of, I mean, universe is not really the right word, but just this world that we were living in. Like it was very nice and heartwarming, even when it was being sort of cruel to us, and when there was conflict. And I think they did a lot of things to make us kind of just trust the screenwriters and trust the story and kind of let your guard down and just let whatever happens, just in terms of how honest they were. Like, you know, the way that I mentioned it, the way that Kumail and Emily interact with each other just felt very real to the way that funny people date each other, essentially. Like, just, you know, always trying to make each other laugh. Everything is a joke. Everything is material for another bit that you can kind of make with that person later on. I really like the way that everything was handled, like with his family. Like, you know, it's not always easy to tell your family that you know, don't believe the same things that they do.
Right.
I thought that was very true and honest. Like I said, I like the fact that he doesn't have this kind of he explodes on them a little bit, but he doesn't have this whole like, you know, and this is why I don't believe this, and this is why blah blah
Right.
blah. Like he's just got they are like, you know, do you not believe in Allah or whatever they say? I don't know if they even say Allah. They do you not
I
believe
think they do
whatever.
say Allah, yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. And I thought that was kind of a really great opportunity to sort of gain credit with the audience of just like, you know, that feels very real and honest, and now I kind of will believe almost anything that you can put in front of me now. And then also the way that she doesn't immediately run into his arms as soon as she wakes up, like that's very true to like, yeah, like she was unconscious that entire time. So I really respect how honest this movie was. It's honestly not really that funny. It's more of a drama, I think, than
definitely.
it. Like I think I was touched, and I was pretty close to tears in the theater. I mean, it's definitely easier to get caught up in the moment, like at like the sort of New York City like premiere, like, and you know that like Kumail and all of them are there, and you're about to see them, and you're kind of struck by how real it is. But it's a very moving movie, and I do have to give a lot of that credit to the screenwriters, Emily and Kumail, just for making it feel that real. And like I said, there's a lot that could be cut from this. And I think my only other complaint besides that is that Kumail, it's hardly a complaint because I wouldn't recast him.
Right.
I just think maybe if I was like Michael Showalter, I might be like, just wipe that smirk off your face, like, or maybe give him some acting lessons before we start. He's really great in all the comedic roles, and I fucking love him in Silicon Valley. He's like one of the funniest people in that. But this is a mostly dramatic movie, and he does not ruin, but he hurts some of the dramatic scenes in this, just with his inability to sort of keep a straight face, and to those are the times that kind of I get pulled out of it, where I'm like, oh, Kumail's like almost smirking during this scene, like but I think all the other acting is great. Like I was fucking in love with Zoe Kazan in this movie. I thought I really like I don't know if this is sexist to say, but when girls are able to do like an ugly cry in a movie, you know what I mean? Like I feel like so many
know
actresses.
exactly what you mean. And we see that in the trailer.
They
too,
do cries that are too conscious of like how they're looking.
Right.
It's one of those weird things where it's like it's sexist either way that you talk about that, but she does a really good cry that feels realistic in this movie.
Right.
Where like you know, like her nose is fucking red and she's sniffling and there's like almost like snot coming out of her nose as she's having these scenes, and like it just felt very real. Like it really allowed me to get into that scene very well. And I really liked Ray Romano and Holly Hunter in this. I thought they were fucking, you know, amazing as the seasoned actors and actresses that they are in this movie. I think the only other one, I don't even really have a complaint about it, but I don't think Bo was as good as I was hoping he would be, just because of how brilliant his stand-up is. I think it's clear that stand-up is probably where he's meant to be.
Yeah.
But I also don't think he's given, like, I think it's hard to write for side characters like that, because you want them to be impactful in the small amount of scenes that they're in. And
Even Adie Bryant kind of looks like she's on SNL.
You overwrite them a little bit. And because they're comedians, like, you want those characters to sound funny.
Right.
And like,
Yep.
I think I would have liked those characters, because of how honest the rest of the film is, to just be a little bit blander almost. Like,
they don't have zingers.
Everything that I hear just from like listening to like Pete Holmes' podcast is how much comedians are just kind of like, when they get off stage, they don't want to be on. Like they want to turn it off and just be, you know, just be a normal person for a while. And I think this was kind of written in a way where it was like they, even when they weren't performing, they were like, oh, bit, joke, bit. There was never a moment where they were just kind of like real life, you know.
Right.
But very small complaints. So overall, I'll give this 4 fingers. You know, a few complaints, but still one of the better movies that I've seen this year for sure.
Yeah. I don't have a whole lot else to say. I really talked a lot during this. I think it definitely spoke volumes about relationships, and I really like that. I mean, I again, to compliment the, like, when she wakes up from the coma and she's not like, I'm not totally behind this relationship right now. It definitely speaks volumes about relationships in the way that I think you both have to be in love at the same time for it to work, kind of, as opposed for like you both have to be out of love at the same time to kind of like get a divorce or break up. It did a nice job of doing that. I don't know. It was interesting to see arranged marriage being approached from more than one side. I think a lot of American cinema demonizes it, and sure, it's weird, kind of sexist tradition. But the film didn't get as xenophobic about like the South Asian culture like I just did by calling it sexist. It is kind of. It's like I don't know. But yeah, and then I think I said almost everything else I need to say. Sorry, I'm just like looking through my notes. Yeah, again, I really liked Ray Romano probably had my favorite performance. I mean, I loved everybody. Again, Kumail was definitely the weakest. Ironically, but again, before that whole cheating thing came up, I really like that he plays a dad that's quiet and docile and kind of like, I don't know, there's so many movie dads that are like, I can't identify with. I'm like, that's not what my dad's like. It's like what mom says goes, you know, like it's always like, you're not going to date my daughter. Kind of like, there's not like really like my dad would be.
Kumail
like,
wasn't really scared of
right.
the dad, even though he was kind of politically incorrect, but it was more the mom that he was scared of.
Right. Yeah.
And the dad is the one Ray Romano is the one that it's like, yeah, come over here, come sit by us, even if he's a little insensitive.
But it's just to close it out, it's about people trying to be good in their lives, and I know that's almost as ambiguous as the IMDb description, but I like that it's not a traditional romantic comedy. I like the way that it deals with all of the parents. There's multiple relationships kind of all in the air at one point. And explores a lot of very realistic problems in relationships. And I really specifically, I like how they wove kind of like, I think I was showing like Sabri the trailer, and she's like, oh, is like Kumail like an Uber driver? And I was like, oh no, it's pretty like, it's a dated premise, but they modernized it, you know?
Yeah. Like even like the ISIS thing, that was not a thing like in like 2005. Like we weren't talking about ISIS back then.
Right. And it's also, and I think one of my favorite kind of like small set pieces or scenes is when they're like, you gotta call her parents, and then he takes her phone out of her purse and then uses her like unconscious finger to like unlock the phone, and he's like, I'm sorry.
That was probably the second biggest laugh that was in the theater after the 9/11
I
terrorist
really like
joke.
that scene. But yeah, again, I did have complaints about it. I thought it was too long, yada, yada, yada. So I think I'm just going to go half a finger below you with 3.5 fingers.
So I don't have to do the math. That'll come down to 3.75, rounding down to 3.5 fingers.
It certainly will.
Accurate.
And Zoe Kazan's Paul Dano's wife.
Yes. And she liked my tweet or Instagram. I can't forget which one, but I posted a picture.
Ooh.
And I tagged all of them, but she was the only one that liked them.
I've never seen her in anything else besides like she had a small part in Bored to Death.
Yeah, I didn't watch that yet.
Yeah,
I think this is the first thing I know her from.
Because I know like
because even like going into this movie, I had erroneously told my girlfriend Rowan, I was like, oh yeah, like Kumail's wife plays his wife too.
I kind of
because I had seen that it was written by
Mm-hmm.
her. I didn't realize that she would be a screenwriter but not be involved in the actual production.
Because I was like, wow, Kumail's like wife is very attractive, kind of.
Zoe Kazan is super fucking cute.
Yeah, no, she's
And she liked my tweet. So we're getting married.
Watch out, Paul Dano.
Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, the only thing I've ever heard of her. Yeah, Bored to Death, because I know both of them are friends with the author Jonathan Ames, and then I think they did like that Ruby Sparks movie where I think it was like Paul Dano and her like doing some sort of, I don't know, they're working with like another like husband and wife like directing I don't know. It sounded interesting, but
familiar with that.
And I
don't know anything about that.
And I know both him and like I think like Paul Dano has played the love interest of Daniel Radcliffe's wife, and then it's been like vice versa. Yeah, and then
They might have said something about that in the Q&A.
Yeah, I think that's like super funny. So then they had to work together on Swiss Army Man. They're like, oh, we've kissed each other's wives before.
Yeah, but if you agree or disagree, please leave a comment below on SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you're listening, or just hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, email. Get in touch with us. We would love to continue the conversation, as we keep saying, about these movies. Yeah, that's about it.
That's about it.
Let's run through some of these links real quick and get out of your guys' hair.
Run through them.
As always, you can find everything at howmanyfingerspodcast.com. On there, you can find a link to iTunes where you can subscribe to us, rate us, leave a review. Really helps our SEO or our exposure, rather, if you leave a rating or review.
Traffic.
Internet. Mouse clicks.
AIM. I'm an Internet Explorer.
You can find a list to a link rather to our mailing list on MailChimp. You can subscribe. You get an email every time we post a new episode or when we have big podcast news, which is all the time because we're just on the up and up. So you're going to want to subscribe to that. You can subscribe to our YouTube where you can watch our episodes every week, our videos. We've got little teasers that we've been putting up on YouTube lately. We just posted our live episode too, which we didn't have video because my car broke down and I couldn't fit everything from my car into Joe's car, and then we were also just super stressed out as soon as we got to the live show. But
It's been a few weeks.
We do have pictures that were taken from the live show, sort of like a slideshow playing over that. So if you want to watch that from our live show, you can check that out. We got a link to our merch store, howmanyfingerspodcast.bigcartel.com. We got t-shirts, we got koozies, we got stickers, and we got a package deal with all three for $11.99. Check it out. And then, as always, our Amazon link and our iTunes link. Click on either. Anything you purchase within each respective platform within the next 24 hours, we'll get a little cut of. Easy way to support the podcast without going too far out of your way. Keep those clicks coming in. And check out a review of Dunkirk last week featuring Sabri, and our review of Atomic Blonde next week. That's all I got.
It's going to be a good one.
It's the best I can do.
Thank you for tuning in to our review of The Big Short.
The Big Sick. Fuck. Signing out for How Many Fingers the Podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Joe.